All right, I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta. This is Weather Watchers here on our Friday. We're wrapping up the work week. What's coming up here in this 30-minute long program prior to getting into the 5 o'clock news that you're watching right here on FCN Plus? Well, let's talk about the forecast, of course. We're also going to talk about the events coming up this week, and there's a lot happening out there, and a look at the tropics. Plus, maybe I might sprinkle a little history in there as well. And to wrap this up, a must-see is my discussion with storm chaser Josh Morgerman. He went through the eye wall of Category 5 Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica. And just the way he talks about going through that storm, it's absolutely breathtaking, remarkable. It just a must watch. But first, you got to get through me here. We're going to talk about what's happening out there this weekend and what's in the forecast. So first off here, welcome. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Beautiful weather across the southeastern U.S. today. High pressure just dominating. What I like to say is big bubble, no trouble. High pressure dominates, big bubble, high pressure. No problems to worry about. Not the case across the northeast, though. There is a low just east of Newfoundland that is, you can actually kind of see it here on radar. Check this thing out. Let's zoom in. Look at that thing. It's actually been rated. It has like hurricane force wind gust in here. Almost looks like it has a little bit of an eye, doesn't it? See that? Monstrous conditions along the east coast of Newfoundland. This is like your classic New England, Canadian maritime towns up there. Like everybody's a fisherman and they all been through the worst of the weather. Classic area right in there. But oh my goodness, that is just a scary looking area of low pressure. Look at that thing. I mean, if this was in Florida, one would probably say that this was a landfalling tropical system. It's not by any means, but it is a potent low. And when I say hurricane strength winds, yeah, gonna be wrapped up in there. Just windy conditions. Oh my goodness. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, we got another low. We always look upstream for the weather impacting the southeast, and now that low up and off towards the Canadian Maritimes are pretty bad, but it's this low that's bringing the snowfall out there across the Rockies, heading over towards Montana, Wyoming. That's all going to eventually dip down in our direction. If we have any chance of rainfall on the first coast, it will be Monday, and it'll be a result of this area of low pressure towards our north and west. So within that low, you got that cooler air there. Still seeing a little bit of lake effect actually across parts of the Tug Hill Plateau. There, Burlington, look at that, it's 37 degrees. 44 in Boston, and 50 in New York, while down towards the south across Texas, Oklahoma, you got that little tongue of warm air sticking up there, and Jacksonville's at 72, but we always look upstream, right? You see that warmer air that is going to work its way in our direction as that high-pressure ridge pushes overhead as we go ahead into the weekend and next week. And it is that time of year we got a lot of these ebbs and flows with this, ups and downs. Right now, we're going to start to see the up, but eventually the trough will push things back down. But at least in the near term, we're just going to continue to be under this high pressure ridge. Look at this all the way out to next Thursday. And it still looks like we're going to be under that high pressure. Beautiful weather just continuing to dominate the forecast. And you see here through Saturday, heading into Sunday, gorgeous weather. Now, there's that next trough that's going to dip down. There's that front that's with it. But that front's not going to be packing much of a punch by the time it gets to our area. We got so much dry air overhead. I mean, look at these dew points that really it's going to have a hard time creating any form of precipitation. I do have like a 10% chance of rain, 5% I think now. I had no forecast for Jacksonville, but it is extremely low. Even when the humidity does spike up there on Sunday, it's still at like a pleasant level. Wednesday, it could climb back again due to an onshore wind, but not really much precipitation associated with it. So take a look outside here on our Friday evening over Jacksonville. It is a gorgeous evening out there. If you're heading out to the fair, last Friday, the fair will ever be downtown. Temperatures into the 70s, mostly sunny skies, a little northeasterly breeze, about 10 miles per hour. I do want to note, though, due to that dry air and a little north wind, there's been some reports of brush fires across parts of the first coast, just because it's so dry. We also had the frost a few days ago. So when you have that frost, it maybe could have killed off some of the weeds, and that also become flammable. So that's another thing that we're just kind of watching out for. It's just so dry, humid, so low, and a little bit of a northeasterly breeze. But I mean, really, that's like the extent of any rough weather. The rest of this evening, temperatures dropping into the 50s, cooling off by tomorrow morning down to 46 degrees. Love it. And then we bounce back up heading into our Saturday, nice and warm up to 77 there on the rebound. So things are going to be looking a lot better even to Saturday. Over towards Sunday to 79 degrees, warmer than normal, back to 80 for a lot of our area too. 79, I believe, in Jax. But if you're going to be heading out to the Jags game, weather is going to be looking pretty good for that as well. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. One thing I do want to know about the Jags game is that once the sun does start to get lower in the horizon, which, remember, it starts at like 5:30, so by the end of the game, it's already getting low in the horizon. If you're in shadow, so on the west side of the stadium, it could start to get a little bit cooler than you think, just because you're not getting that direct sunlight out there. But here's a look at our high temperatures through the next Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We warm back up to 79 degrees. Monday at 78, Tuesday at 79. Next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I fully anticipate us to get into the 80s out here in that extended forecast. You can see there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, back up to 81 to 82 degrees. So, lots of ups and downs here in the outlook, but at least, there's plenty of high pressure, plenty of sunshine, plenty of beautiful weather to work with here across the First Coast. And if you're curious about the extremely long-range forecast, even all the way out to like Thanksgiving, weather is looking pretty decent in that extended outlook there. But there's the Jags game I was just talking about, and I'm going to talk more about that in depth here in just about 3 minutes. We'll break down what that morning forecast is going to look like for you for tailgating, and then extending all the way out into the evening hours. But yeah, 79 there on your Tuesday, lows into the 50s. By Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're up to 81 degrees with those lows into the mid to high 50s. We even bounce back up to about 61 as we head into our Friday. So some gorgeous weather. Take a look at this, though. We're 13 days out, from Thanksgiving. Christmas just 41 days away. And if you're a New Year's partier, 48 days out. But now is about the time where if you're cooking a turkey, maybe make sure you got it. First of all, you don't want to be running around the day of Thanksgiving. But we're not quite the defrosting time, but we're getting close. Especially if you got a big fat turkey. We're getting kind of to that time frame here to keep an eye on that. Christmas, though, here on the First Coast, we typically have temperatures into the 60s. Sometimes we get some colder weather. Hasn't snowed on Christmas Day in I think it did once, but it's been a while. That would be quite remarkable. I think it was back in the 80s it did. It was a Christmas Eve it snowed, more like slate. But yeah. And then 48 days, like I said, till New Year's. So what I want to do right now is we're going to head to a break here, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk about some events going on around the First Coast, dive into the tropical outlook, and maybe a little bit of history if you want to hear about it. So that concludes the part of the forecast. Let's talk about some other stuff happening around the country. We'll be right back. All right, so yeah, let's talk about what we got going on this weekend around the First Coast. And first off, we have pretty much well, of course, like I said, 2 weeks until Thanksgiving here, but we got the fair also still going on right now. Final weekend for the fair in downtown Jacksonville. And you might be thinking, okay, what do you mean by the final weekend? Well, next year it's moving over towards the west side of town. So this is the last time after, I think, 70 years. Well, it says it right there on the graphic. How about that? 70 years of the fair being in downtown. It will now move over towards the west side of town. A little more feasible for them. I mean, you remember, it's not just the big Ferris wheel and roller coasters out here. They bring in a lot of animals. That's why it's called the Agricultural Jacksonville Fair. You got cows, pigs, chickens in there. They got all the different competitions that go on with them. And it really does bring a lot of people like to just see cows for the first time. I've met some people who are like, yeah, I've never seen a cow up close. So the fair is, it's always unique in that. And the weather's looking pretty good for the weekend, for the final weekend of the Jacksonville Fair. We got temperatures up to the 70s. Look at that on Sunday, Saturday and Sunday, 75, 76. The highs, though, after the gates open, which they open around noon, will be up into like 78, 79 degrees. I would say go Saturday. Only because, and this is purely just a logistical thing, Sunday is the Jags game going on locally. And you imagine, the fair opens up at 12 on Sunday. The Jags game, everybody's going to be down here getting ready, unless you're doing both, the fair and the Jags game. But it sounds like it's going to be a wild downtown here on Sunday. And I just gotta say, you pack your patience if you're going to be coming out to it, because the traffic, I'm sure, is going to be just a monstrosity here. But then we'd bounce over to, how about St. John's Town Center from 2 to 8 p.m. here on Saturday. They got the Christmas tree lighting going on. Temperatures will be into the 70s, right around 2, 3, 4 o'clock. I'm sure they're probably going to light it up around 6. Sunsets at 5:30. Temperatures be high 60s. Didn't feel appropriate with high 60s near 70 to put a actual Christmas tree on here, so I tossed up the palm trees because it's just going to be warm. But it's going to be beautiful. It's always a fun event. Another one where you got to pack your patience, usually a very crowded event. There's a lot of parking at St. John's Town Center. You just pack your comfy shoes because you might be walking a little bit if you're going to be heading out to that event. But the weather's looking pretty good here on Saturday midday. Or another pack your patience. It's my expression of the weekend, because there's all these great events going on, but everybody goes to them. And that is at 6:30, we have the lighting ceremony out there in St. Augustine for Nights of Light. I always go on a Monday or Tuesday when there's not a lot of people there. But whenever you go, I mean, Saturday's fun, but just whenever you go, it's beautiful regardless. There's just so many lights. It's absolutely gorgeous when it's all lit up. And this is just a spectacular time. And the weather on Saturday and Sunday, for that matter, is both looking absolutely fantastic. So if you're going to be going out either day, or if you miss it this weekend, don't worry. This goes until like January. And it's even been shortened a little bit this year. But it goes for a while, and it's a spectacular time. Absolutely beautiful. I would highly suggest checking it out. The weather, once again, is looking great. You see a theme here for the weekend? The weather's looking fantastic. One thing, maybe we're going to have a little bit of a southwesterly breeze on Sunday, so if you're going boating offshore, it might be a little bit of a chop. But if you're on land, that's about it. Downtown Jacks, when the gates open for tailgating, the weather will already be into the 60s. That is pretty beautiful for mid-November. We warm up to about 75 by noontime, and just absolutely gorgeous to start off the day. And then if you're going to head into the stadium, which this is going to be one of the last games played here. Is it the last game? I think it is. No. One of them. At 1 o'clock, Everbank Stadium there. Weather's looking gorgeous. 77. Got that west breeze that's going to be out there. Nice and warm. 3, 4 o'clock. But like I mentioned, by 4, it's 79. I'm probably going to drop that down a little bit. Because my thing is that when the sun starts to get lower towards the horizon, which remember it sets at 5:30, it's going to start to get in the shadow there in the stadium. And we are at that time of year. It is warm. It is Florida Florida. But if you're in the shadow, it does cool off pretty quickly. And thus, you might feel a little bit cooler. Now, if you're on the east side of the stadium, you have a little bit more sunshine, the visiting side, you might be just fine a little bit longer, especially if you're like in the top rows. You're up there in the cheap seats. I sit there too, don't worry. Not hating on you. And also, you're probably winning out because you'll be staying warm a little bit longer than the people who might have had the expensive seats on the home side right near the field. They're going to be the first persons in shadow here as we head to about that 4 or 5 o'clock hour. But 1 o'clock, the sun should be pretty high in the sky. You don't have too much to worry about there. Meanwhile, I want to take a look back. November 14th, 1969. Here's a little interesting tidbit. Apollo 12 took off. And it was hit by a lightning bolt. It occurred about 36 seconds after liftoff. Fuel cells were shut down for a moment. This is why nowadays they're so particular about launching rockets when there are clouds nearby. Because there wasn't even a thunderstorm in the area. It was just a big cloud. But as the rocket went through it, it actually triggered some lightning just by messing up the whole electromagnetism. But anyways, pretty cool stuff. I say cool now. I can safely say that now. I'm sure at the time everybody was like, what? And also at the time they didn't really delay because there was clouds overhead. This was all about like beating the Russians. So middle of Cold War, and they just said, light this fire on this thing and let's see what happens. But a little interesting, Apollo 12, 1969 was hit by a bolt of lightning. It's why today when you're watching any rocket launches, they're very particular about the weather conditions to launch them in. Meanwhile, just keep it on going here. Let's move over to the tropics side of things. Nothing out there at this point, and I think we can probably put a fork in it at this point too, as far as our tropical season. We're at that point where only about 1% of all tropical systems take place. I have to fix this graphic. We are not mid-September. We're more so, we're November 15th, obviously, and we are at that point where like 1 to 2% of all tropical systems take place around this time. It happens. We just passed the anniversary of Gordon. We were talking about that yesterday here with myself and our chief meteorologist, Lewis Turner, about Gordon. It was on the anniversary. Very rare storm. It was from the 80s, and it actually caused flooding in Haiti. Over 1,000 people passed away from it. So we are still in hurricane season, but we're about done. We've more or less wrapped it up. With that said, there's still plenty to talk about out there in the tropics as far as recovery going on. Remember, Jamaica is still recovering from that Cat 5 Melissa. As that pushed overhead, it's going to be not only weeks but months. And I think sometimes we get into the winter season and we forget about these impacts out here. So to remind you, we're going to go to a break in a moment, and when we come back, I'm going to talk with our storm chaser, Josh Morgaman, good friend of mine. He went through the eye wall of Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica, Cat 5 winds, and to hear him describe it is just jaw-dropping. So, gonna have this interview with him here, a really special interview. So make sure you watch it, and then stick around because I'll be here giving you that forecast at First Coast News at 5. We'll be right back. Hurricane Melissa made landfall as one of the strongest storms to ever come ashore in the Atlantic. It had sustained winds at 185 miles per hour, a high end Category 5 storm. And in the middle of this was videographer Josh Morgan. He's been in some of the strongest storms on Earth. And Melissa, he said, ranks as one of the strongest. I had the privilege to talk with him about what it was like inside of this Category 5 storm and the ongoing recovery efforts in Jamaica. So I'm here with extreme storm chaser Josh Morgan. Josh, so much for taking time to talk with me here about Melissa and the impacts out there from this storm system. Um, Josh, you've been through over 80 plus eye walls. And this Category 5, how does this rank against all the other storms you've been through here?
It's a good question. I'm still sort of like reflecting on it, sort of digesting it. There's some kind of like, yeah, there's some digesting after an experience like this, but it very well might have been number one out of the 83 hurricanes I've been in terms of just the unbelievable ferocity of this thing. Definitely for sure, top three, possibly number one. It was off the charts. This is as strong as hurricanes get.
That is absolutely incredible. And I guess to follow up on that, so you were communicating, you're very good at putting out information in real time during and ahead of these storms. People all over the world watch you. And I know that on October 28th at 10:25, you put out a tweet, and this is just a little clip of it. Frightening power, whiteout, roofs tearing off, gusts like bombs. And then after you put out this tweet, you went communication dark for about 36 hours, and that was right when the storm was making landfall. Can you talk me through what happened during those 36 hours?
Yeah, I think that tweet, I think I must have sent that just around when we were entering the eye wall. We started to get real wind damage. The building across the street, the roof ripped off, and then the second story, which was made of concrete, collapsed. That's how strong the winds were already, and it actually got worse from there. The palm trees were bending almost to the ground. It was just wild looking. And then everything just turned white. You couldn't see anything. The inside of the core of this hurricane was just a solid whiteout. It was just white. It was pure energy with like wreckage flying by. And there was a screaming sound that was so loud. I was with a couple of people, including a couple of women who were holding their ears. That's how loud the scream of the wind was. We were in the kitchen of the hotel. We finally had to bolt the door shut. And when you peeked through the cracks in the shutters, all you could see was whiteness. And I remember thinking to myself, this town's getting absolutely blasted. And when the hurricane started to move away, my fears were well founded. The destruction was just off the charts. Hard to even capture it in words.
But I mean, as far as just saying it in words go, not too many people have been through Cat 5 storms, and I think that